Soup.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nerd Soup. I am Beau Oliver, joined here today with Aaron, the Nerd Soup Monkey, and we are here to review She Dies Tomorrow, an indie film from way back in 2020, which feels like 10 years ago. Directorial debut for Amy Seimetz, who's been working in Hollywood more as an actor over the years, but she had her chance to direct her first movie, and then South by Southwest was canceled. So it's a movie that a lot of people I don't think are very familiar with. Only made $400,000 at the box office, but I remember watching it back in 2020 and enjoying it. So when it was suggested by one of our patrons, Alex Marshall, as a movie review, I was excited to get back into this 80-minute little existential thrill ride, if you want to call it that. And review it with you. Aaron, I know this is your first time watching it, so what were your initial thoughts?
I actually enjoyed this movie quite a bit. It's definitely not your typical film. It's definitely, like you said, delves into some, I think, deeper themes. I mean, with movies like this, it's hard to kind of really pin down what they're going for or what the exact themes are. I kind of took away from it, like, just the how fear or anxieties or ideas can spread, and how they can, get out of control. And once something's introduced to you, paranoia could take over and kind of take on a life of its own. And they use that with the whole, I'm going to die tomorrow. And it was kind of like a virus spreading through everyone who interacted, or like a parasite that took a hold and overcame these people, and basically kind of having this kind of existential crisis. And there's a little bit of, an element of if it's really happening or what's actually going on here, but just that idea or the idea that ideas themselves can spread from one person to another and overcome them in a way that is unexpected.
Yeah, I think that's actually an interesting takeaway, definitely, the idea of it spreading throughout a town. You can apply that to many different things. It could be political fear, or it can be individual fear, that existential dread, which is, we definitely see it with the main character. Matt Neglia, on his review on Letterboxd, said that it was just one sentence: see what happens when you live every day like it's your last. I also thought that was an interesting takeaway as well, because people always say, live every day like there's no tomorrow. But if you did in fact know that there was no tomorrow, you'd be a mess. You'd be just a spiraling ball of existential dread. And that's really what this movie is. Like you said, it's spreading to different characters. Some of these scenes were actually very funny. Chris Messina, who I think is one of the most underrated actors working today, he was great in that scene, where they're just trying to be the typical douchebag couple with their friends over, just trying to have a good time, enjoy the birthday party, but it's totally crashed by his sister. And she's just acting so dead ass in that scene, So if somebody actually did do that to you, it could freak you out in reality, if somebody just kind of has this sort of breakdown in front of you.
Dude, it's so funny because every time in my life when somebody brings up something that I haven't thought about before, and they're like, "Oh, you're not worried about this?" It's like, "No, but now I am."
Right.
Thanks a lot, Dick. But
no, I do feel bad about the way I act sometimes with other people, where I'm like, I'm just bringing everybody down, when I'm the one to remind them of these terrible things that are happening in the world. I'm that person.
Yeah, it was like me at Disney when I kept reminding all the little children about the real Walt Disney.
Yeah, I mean, come on, that's like Santa Claus for kids. Let them have that. Let them discover that on their own. But it's also interesting because I think, one of the ideas in this movie is that it's hard for people to be understanding with their family, with their friends, when they're exhibiting these symptoms, having this existential dread. You don't really know how to respond to it. So I found that to be an interesting idea as well, because for a lot of people, it's about having this sort of support system. But what happens when, you live your life a certain way and you end up alone? That loneliness, sometimes, you don't have something to fall back on.
You just did it to me.
Right, I put an idea in your head.
Yeah.
But I think that, for a first-time director, she was very skilled at capturing kind of the isolation of some of these characters.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the interesting ideas thrown out, too, were some of the things where, like you said, some of these people are very lonely and don't want to go through this experience alone, but when we see them early, before they come to this realization, they're hesitant to be there for the person who's going through the same thing. It's not until they have that realization, and those moments were, I think, captured very well when they finally come to the realization of what's actually happening, that they kind of get an understanding, and it kind of passes on. It kind of goes from person to person, but we see those people being kind of selfish and not open, but then when the same thing happens to them, it kind of opens up a different perspective. And I think a lot of another interesting part of the film was when kind of like the stages, almost like the stages of grief or whatever, when they have the realization and kind of how they deal with that as time goes on. You know, the first jarring experience, it's very shocking to them, but then you see by the end of their journeys, maybe they kind of accept it, but there still is a little bit of a hesitance to accept it.
Right, and when people criticize this movie because, you know, it's very divisive, saying that it has no narrative, that it doesn't really make sense, I think that there are a lot of emotional points that really hit, even though there isn't this sort of traditional narrative in this movie. You know, like you said, the way that people are responding to this crisis that's happening in this town is some people have happier endings than others in this movie. The lead character, she has it the worst because she's dealing with this guilt of, you know, after she dies, that she's going to have no use. So she's laying on the floor and saying, oh, this used to be alive once and now I walk on it without thinking. And she wants to, you know, she has this idea of turning herself into something useful after she passes. So that's also an interesting idea, that human beings have to grapple with the fact that when we die, that's kind of it for us.
Yeah, and I think they delved into a little bit with when they're talking about how, you know, dolphins act in the wild, right? And how they're could be very human-like, and that goes into a discussion about like just human nature in general. And I think human nature is portrayed pretty well throughout each individual character and their each individual kind of reaction to what's going on here.
Right, yeah. There's a lot of these characters don't have a lot of screen time because it is a short movie, but I enjoyed all of these little subplots, all these little diversions into how it would spread. Josh Lucas as the doctor gives such a great performance just from his reaction to Jane, who was also great in this. Jane Addams just plays a character named Jane. She was fantastic, but his reaction and then his breakdown, you felt so bad for him. And he's a guy that's been in so many different movies having these kind of bit parts. I wish he was somebody who would get more roles. Same thing as Chris Messina, and same thing for the lead, Caitlin Scheel. She looks like someone who would be more present in the indie circuit. She's kind of got that look to her. She's got those sad eyes, and I think the existential dread of this movie is written all over her face. When you see those flashbacks, when you see that her problems, where they kind of come from, why she's experiencing all of this dread, she was great, and I'd love to see her in more things. I mean, she hasn't been in much since this came out, and she wasn't in much before it. So
I think, yeah, her performance was. I mean, everyone was like really good, and just how they kind of they
really fit the roles and the moments of the movie.
And yeah, little subtle things, just like facial expressions, and kind of you really felt like they were, and her character in particular were like really just going through a whirlwind. Even though if it wasn't the most like fast-moving movie, very slow and subdued in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of the performances reflected that. Yeah, even like those moments where it kind of breaks into this supernatural element with the lighting and the sounds and echoes, very eerie, very definitely draped with some horror elements to it. And
yeah, definitely. I mean, the neon lights were great, so that visual aspect was very freaky. It takes you out of it, but in a good way. Because you don't know, it does such a good job of transitioning from this is really happening to this is a surreal moment. And that's kind of what an anxiety attack is, right? It hits you out of nowhere. I also really enjoyed the way that opening scene when she wakes up and it's a new day and she's so happy to experience it. And then it cuts to her really waking up and it's gray outside and she's a bit tired. So sometimes, once again, it could show you how quickly that can seep in, where the day is ruined for you. And it's also an interesting idea of, like I said, trying to express these problems to other people and how not everyone's equipped to deal with that, and how it can change their mood and they can catch it as well. That it's not as simple as just saying, hey, help me with this. You have to know how to help. So it just speaks to, these are conversations we're still not great at having, which means we need to have them more consistently. But it was an interesting little fact that she used her salary from Pet Sematary to finance this, Amy Seimetz.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's great for the indie industry, right? Actors have to use their salaries from big budgeted pieces of shit to finance their passion projects.
I mean,
very sustainable.
That's kind of the way it's been going.
Right.
Look at every in terms of not only funny projects, but we see actors all the time take on big roles, get the payday, and kind of just do what they want after that. It's like they kind of need that. Yeah,
like Michelle Rodriguez in this. The first time I watched it, I thought, "Oh my God, Michelle Rodriguez!" And then I rewatched it for this review, and I was like, "Oh my God, Michelle Rodriguez! There she is again."
Yeah.
Totally forgot she's in there.
Nice little cameo role.
You know what? She was very good, too. She got like 2 minutes of screen time, but I really liked her character. She was bringing it, man.
I mean, yeah, a 90-minute film on Hulu. I think it's definitely worth a shot. And yeah, I think a lot of people will, get something different from it. And some people, like you said, won't be the biggest fans, but I think it might connect and really hit for some people. And that's always a good thing. I like films like that. The 5 on IMDb with the 88% critic rating.
Yes.
That's cinema right there.
Indeed it is. I'm going to try to get my mom to watch this. Good to tell her it's a musical. I like doing that to people.
Just lying to them?
Yes. Alright guys, that does it for this review. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you again to Alex Marshall for suggesting this Patreon review. It's a great movie to watch. It was a great movie to talk about with you, Aaron, but we are signing off. We will see you next time with our next Patreon review, which will be Battlestar Galactica, early 2000s sci-fi series, which ended up being one of my all-time favorite shows ever. So, can't wait to drop that, and yeah, we'll see you soon.
Damn, we were making some good points in that video. Hey guys, Aaron and Nerd Soup Monkey here. Before we end this video, I want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters. What can I say about you guys that I haven't already said about myself? You are the most important part of the channel and the main reason we keep going strong. Like Beau says, you keep the lights on in the fridge so the fridge is full. Or something like that. So, from everyone here at Nerd Soup, I'd like to thank you guys for your continued support. If you're interested in joining the ranks of our Patreon supporters, head over to patreon.com/nerdsoup and check out the rewards we offer to our patrons. We recently dropped some new stickers for you guys to check out, or you could choose a tier that will allow you to select a movie, show, or video game for us to review. We've got a full slate of fan-suggested reviews coming your way, and we're really excited about the chance to review some of those movies and shows. We've also got t-shirts, mugs, behind-the-scenes videos showing how we bring our videos to life. And once again, thank you to all our Patreon pledgers who have been supporting us throughout the years. Without you, we wouldn't be able to convert all your pledges into cryptocurrency, so thank you from my future self for making us rich.